Hello, I'm Dr. Carlo Carandang, and I'm a psychiatrist. Today, I will talk about the negative cycle of acrophobia, also known as the fear of heights. So here is an example of the negative cycle of acrophobia, also known as the fear of heights. So your trigger is that you see, hear, or think about being on top of tall buildings or bridges. So when you see, hear, or think about being on top of a building, tall building, or on a bridge, or on top of the Grand Canyon, this event then induces thoughts about the event. So let's say you're at the edge of the Grand Canyon, or you're on top of the Empire State Building in New York City. You might think that something bad is going to happen, or that you might fall, and that you might hurt yourself as you will fall, and that you will not be able to cope with this danger. So these thoughts about being on top of tall structures or buildings makes you think that you are in danger, or that you might hurt yourself or kill yourself as you might fall. So these thoughts then induce anxiety. You are fearful, and then you get the physical effects of anxiety from the release of adrenaline into your bloodstream as a result of the fear. And this is also called the fight or flight response, where your heart rate increases. You start breathing faster, you sweat, you start to tremble, so you might have an outright panic attack if you are actually on top of a tall building, top of a tall bridge, or on top of the Grand Canyon looking down. So this anxiety then makes you avoid. So you start to avoid anything having to do with tall structures. So you avoid bridges, you avoid going to the top of tall buildings, you avoid the Grand Canyon. And if you find yourself on top of a bridge or tall structure, then you do everything you can to flee or escape. However, avoiding these tall structures maintains your belief in the danger and the direness of events, and this then perpetuates and continues this negative cycle of acrophobia. So let's get into each one of these in detail. So let's say you have acrophobia, also known as the extreme fear of heights. So your triggers are that you see, hear, or think about heights or tall structures. So this event induces thoughts about the event. So again, your thoughts are that something bad is going to happen to you, that you might fall off the structure, that the bridge might collapse, or the building might collapse, or the Grand Canyon might crumble, or you might think you will not be able to cope, or you might think that you're going to be harmed, or worse yet, you think you're going to fall to your demise. So these thoughts about danger or about falling then induce anxiety, and then you become fearful, and then you have the physical effects from the release of adrenaline into your bloodstream, which is also known as the fight or flight response, where you start to have increased heart rate, increased breathing, your chest pounds, you have trembling, you start to sweat, and you might have a full-blown panic attack from being on top of the bridge or the tall structure. So this anxiety then makes you want to avoid anything having to do with being in high places, or with heights or tall structures. So you start to behave in ways in which you avoid anything having to deal with tall structures or bridges or tall buildings. And if you do find yourself on top of a tall bridge, then you do everything you can to flee or to escape. And if you don't flee or escape, then it induces a massive anxiety attack. So although the avoidant behaviors decrease your anxiety over the short term, the behaviors actually maintain your overall anxiety from the feared stimulus. So what happens is that the avoidance maintains the belief in the danger and the direness of events. So if you avoid, then it just maintains your belief that it is dangerous, and that the structure may fall, and that you might be harmed. So when you avoid, then it just continues this belief and this erroneous belief then perpetuates this negative cycle of acrophobia. So again, this vicious negative cycle continues because of these avoidant behaviors which perpetuates these beliefs. So the feared stimulus induces thoughts, which induces anxiety, which compels you to avoid. So instead of just exposing yourself to the trigger and finding out nothing bad will occur, you avoid the trigger, and this maintains your belief in the danger. So with avoidance, you never get to find out that the anxiety will go away naturally on its own if you just stay with your trigger. So if you just stay on top of that bridge and you do it enough times, eventually the anxiety will go away naturally on its own. However, you can't just go, if you have acrophobia, you can't just go on top of a bridge without having an extreme panic attack. I mean, this is why you avoid the bridges in the first place, is that you're going to have a panic attack while you're on the bridge. And so having a panic attack is just an extreme form of anxiety, and it's intolerable. So you can't just expose yourself by going on the bridge right away. So what helps is what's called cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT. And CBT helps to break the negative cycle of acrophobia by first changing how we think about these events and what we do. And also in cognitive behavioral therapy, you are exposed to the feared stimulus in more tolerable ways. So for instance, instead of just going on the bridge, your therapist or your program might help you to just visualize being on top of a bridge, which in it of itself is anxiety provoking. And then once you can visualize and then relax yourself enough to visualize yourself on top of a bridge, then there are relaxation techniques that are instituted to help you cope and to decrease your anxiety. And once you're able to do this, then you move on to the next level of exposure, which is then maybe to actually see a bridge, and then using relaxation techniques to calm yourself and to decrease the anxiety. So it's difficult to change the way we feel, so we focus on changing the way we think and the way we do things. So that is what happens in CBT. For more information and help on acrophobia and other anxiety problems, please visit AnxietyBoss.com. I'm Dr. Carlo Carandang. Thank you for listening.